Good day and welcome everybody to the May 2018 edition of FSMA Fridays. As always, we're very grateful to have so many of you join us today. My name's Jennifer Kenyon and I'll be your host for today's session. Looks like we've got a great crowd today, some new attendees and also folks who join us each month. Today we're going to be digging into the topic of the FDA Food Safety Plan Builder, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get started. But first, I'd like to welcome everybody back and say for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, we're excited to have you here. Our sign-up list for FSMA Fridays continues to grow, which is great, and we think that's a great sign that folks value the content that we get out of these sessions. In fact, we're celebrating the 5th anniversary of FSMA Fridays. The first FSMA Fridays session took place in April 2013. So pop the champagne and drop the balloons because we've been meeting almost every month for the past 5 years. And we really have all of you to thank for helping us reach that milestone. So what is FSMA Fridays? If you're new to this webcast, our focus is to touch on recent changes, activities, updates, related news about the FDA and FSMA, and to discuss industry trends that we've seen as FSMA has taken shape and rolled out over the years. It's also an opportunity to hear, learn from, and ask questions of the leaders in this industry with the Acheson Group. The folks from TAG co-sponsor these sessions and have been great supporters in the industry and great partners to work with, not just with our clients, but in providing this as a service to the food industry community. And on the software side is where we do our part. At Safety Chain, we have a food quality management system for food safety, quality assurance, and supplier compliance, so we've got you covered on both bases. Before we dig into what's new with FSMA and this month's topic, we have just a few housekeeping tips regarding today's webcast. We try to keep this pretty informal. These are part training, part conversation, and we hope you enjoy that format. We also know that these are important and serious topics and they tend to generate lots of audience questions. We encourage that. This is a great forum for you to ask questions, so don't be afraid to ask them. If you have a question that's maybe a little too specific or we come up against time constraints, we might choose to take that offline after the event, but we do try to get to each and every question and answer as many as we can. So feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A box. We'll monitor those behind the scenes and save them for the end. You notice that the panelists are the only ones displayed on the right, so while we have a large group here, in the interest of everyone's privacy, we only display the panelists. The number one question we always get is, will this be recorded? And the answer is yes. We'll be sharing a copy of the recording along with a slide deck afterwards, so if you prefer to sit back with a cup of coffee and just enjoy the presentation, you can certainly do that, and then watch the replay at your leisure. The last detail before we get started is that we're on a webinar tool, and sometimes technology doesn't cooperate as we hope it will, so if you do have any audio issues, we'll do our best to help you, but usually the best way to solve any audio or connection problems is either changing your audio source, so you can either use your computer or you can use the phone, or just log out and log back in. That usually solves the problem. So again, as I mentioned today, we'll touch real quickly on a few updates, but the real focus here is digging into the details of the FDA Food Safety Plan Builder, and then we'll follow up with a little bit of Q&A at the end. Today we're joined by Christopher Snabes, Senior Manager of Food Safety at the Acheson Group. Mr. Snabes has joined us for FSMA Fridays many times in the past, and we're happy to have him back with us today. He's a PCQI lead instructor for human food, animal food, and foreign supplier verification program. Welcome back, Christopher. It's good to have you back on FSMA Fridays.
Hello, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Great. To kick things off, let's talk about the latest FSMA news. I understand that you have some FSMA updates to share.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to discuss the meeting that TAG attended this week. We attended the Food Defense and Protection Institute Food Defense Conference. It was held in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was from Tuesday through Thursday. At that meeting, Dr. Stefan Ostroff, who is the Deputy Commissioner for Foods and Veterinary Medicine, stated that the Food Defense Guidance document will be released, and this is his quote, tantalizingly soon. The guidance will be released for public comment in 3 different sections. The first section, as he stated, will be released very, very soon, and that's FDA speak, so you can interpret that as you like. And sections 2 and 3 should be released by late this summer. We look forward to learning more about the guidance documents once they are released, and TAG will be happy to provide another detailed update at that time. Secondly, earlier today, the FDA released the Small Entity Compliance Guide, and that is to help food facilities meet their registration requirements for small entities. And I have not had a chance to read that guidance yet. It has just been released, so you could say that's breaking news.
Great.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were wrapping that up.
I'm ready for the next slide.
Okay, great. Let's move on to today's focus.
Thank you.
You know, we talked about this during our August 2017 FSMA Friday session right after the FDA announced the release of the Food Safety Plan Builder tool. And I'm going to hand you the reins here, Christopher, so you can tell us more about it.
Thank you. This month we'll be talking about the electronic version of the FDA Food Safety Plan Builder. I'll be giving the listeners some insights and tips into using the builder. In the fall of 2017, the FDA released their new tool. It's called the Food Safety Plan Builder. The Food Safety Plan Builder is a new software tool designed to help owners and operators of food facilities create a food safety plan. Please note, this is only for the Human Food Preventive Controls Rule. Owners and operators of food facilities can download the Food Safety Plan Builder from the FDA's website for free, and it will guide them step by step through the creation of a food safety plan, which is required by the current good manufacturing practice, hazard analysis, and risk-based preventive controls for human food rule under the FDA Food Safety Modernization Act. Use of this tool is strictly optional on the part of the user. The FDA is not requiring use of this tool to develop a facility's food safety plan. Although the content of the Food Safety Plan Builder, which is currently version 1.2, is consistent with the FDA's existing guidance and regulations, use of the Food Safety Plan Builder by owners and operators of food facilities does not mean that their food safety plan, preventive controls, good manufacturing practices, or other food safety procedures are quote-unquote approved by the FDA or comply with FDA requirements. What it does do is pre-populate the corresponding rule numbers associated with the human PC rule with each related question, or a step number, which is automatically assigned, and the response you, the user, provide as a reference as to why it must be answered. There is supplementary information to support each response required by the user, which is referenced on each step during the entire process. This is very useful to assist the user's understanding of what exactly is being asked. So, what do you need to use it? Well, it is not designed to be used on Mac operating systems. It is not designed to be shared with another computer within a company, and therefore it's not designed to be used on a system network within a company. And it's done this way on purpose to make sure that your plan is secure. Because of this, it's not a very useful tool for larger companies where multiple PCQIs would need to access the food safety plan to update and or amend any portion of the food safety plan. Therefore, if you're going to have a consultant prepare a food safety plan while under the watch of the company PCQI, which is allowed per human PC rule, it would be best for that consultant to use a dedicated computer within the company. So how do you prepare to begin filling out all the information on the electronic version? Ideally, you'll already have the food safety plan completed in some type of a Word document or Excel spreadsheet combination, which could then be easily cut and pasted to populate the window fields as they appear while working through the Food Safety Plan Builder. We listed the types of files that would be useful. For your facility information, you would simply add your name of company, the location, your facility ID number, the name of your PCQI, members of your food safety team members, etc. It will then ask you for some preliminary steps, such as what types of foods are produced, what processes are used, what is the intended use, what is your distribution, etc. It's best to already have a written narrative for each one of these so you can cut and paste it into the plan. It will then ask you for some good manufacturing practices and prerequisite programs that you use. This is a large series of yes, no types of questions. If some of the questions are not applicable, you can check the not applicable box. And it will ask about things about your personnel practices, the physical structure of the building, how you handle food contact tools, basically all of your GMPs that you would normally see within a food facility. We then come down to the hazard analysis and preventive controls determination. This will need to be completed for each ingredient and each process step. Note, as with all food safety plans, the hazard analysis is where the most time should be dedicated to determine what preventive control is needed for a hazard that has been identified. This includes written justifications and references used to support your justifications. This is also where each process step will be pre-assigned a number, which will then be carried throughout the entire document, whereby you will need to fill in the appropriate preventive control for the hazard identified, such as the ones listed below: process preventive controls, food allergen preventive controls, sanitation preventive controls, supply chain preventive controls, which I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide, and of course, your recall plan. So what are some options? The user can insert an attachment at the end of the document to support various preventive controls, such as a list of your supply chain control suppliers, all their addresses, any supporting documents that you would have, such as prerequisite program documents, SOPs, etc. You can start and stop the addition of any input at any time and go back to the program wherever you left off. You can print out a hard copy of the complete food safety plan in a PDF. In regards to the supply chain preventive controls I discussed in the prior slide, it's important to note that sometimes the supply chain information can be extensively long, especially if you have many, many suppliers and or a large amount of ingredients. Because of this, be prepared to spend a significant amount of time while you are entering the supply chain control portion of the food safety plan builder. Challenges. As with all programs, there's always some challenges. There are going to be portions of the plan that will ask you to either enter information in manually or automatically by dropping a pre-populated file from your desktop. If you are given a chance, it's to your benefit to enter the information manually. The reason why I say that is if you make a mistake or you want to amend something before moving on later on in the document, it's a lot easier to go back and make a correction to your information that you entered incorrectly. If you enter a document that's pre-populated, it is almost impossible to go back and start over again in that same food safety plan builder. You have to download or you have to create a second version. So it's our opinion that whenever you receive a question to enter information manually, we suggest you enter it manually. The next tip is when you are given an option to use your next or the back button as you're progressing through each field, we suggest you always use those. You do have an option when you are entering the data on the left hand of your screen. There will be what they call a tree list, which is a list of pre-populated questions and steps. And if you decide to skip around in that tree list instead of using the next or back button, you can sometimes inadvertently pre-populate something that you didn't want to do. So therefore, it's always best to use the next or back button. I'll give you an example. Let's say you stated a preventive control is required for an allergen. A preventive control will be assigned for that ingredient, and then the allergen section will ask a series of related questions that will need to be answered for that ingredient. If you make a mistake early on and misstate an allergen as a preventive control requirement, you need to go back to the beginning to remove it. The benefit to all of this is that it acts as a type of a fail-safe mechanism to make sure you understand what is required and that you call out a preventive control, and when you do call out the preventive control, that everything related to that is answered correctly. And perhaps the biggest challenge is time. It's not a quick document at all to populate and go through, especially if you have a large number of ingredients or a very large amount of suppliers. As I said, you can stop at any time and resume where you left off. It's also designed so a PCQI or its equivalent has the understanding of what is being asked. If you're very small or a small company, it's not designed to be with someone who is unfamiliar with your process or your ingredients. You need to have some food safety knowledge and production knowledge of your facility in order to complete the food safety plan. So what are some of the benefits? Well, it's one way to ensure that your food safety plan is complete as far as what is needed as required by FSMA. So it goes through all the steps from beginning to end, and it's a nice document to have, and everything is in one spot. So that's a good benefit. It's also an easy way to document when the food safety plan undergoes reanalysis for FSMA requirements. And I want to go over a little bit of why reanalysis is important. The food safety plan is not designed to be created and sit on a shelf. It's to be used frequently, and it is to be there to be referenced frequently. And because of that, reanalysis is going to happen. By definition, the food safety plan must be reanalyzed at least once every 3 years by the qualified individual. Even if the reanalysis shows that nothing has changed, a facility must document that the reanalysis was conducted and that nothing has changed that warranted a change in the plan. There are several other things that can trigger reanalysis sooner than the 3 years. And for most facilities, they're going to reanalyze more than once every 3 years. What are those? Well, corrective actions. If something unexpected happens and an unanticipated corrective action is taken, this is a trigger to reanalyze your food safety plan to incorporate whatever happened that resulted in ad hoc corrective action. The second time is when reanalysis must occur whenever there is a significant change. For example, a change in formulation, a process, building construction, etc. Reanalysis must occur whenever the facility becomes aware of a new hazard and updates made to the food safety plan depending if the hazard is potential or deemed to require preventive control. Reanalysis must occur if a preventive control is found to be ineffective. And of course, whenever the FDA comes into your site and says your food safety plan needs to be reanalyzed because they feel for some reason it is inadequate. And Jennifer, I'm going to hand this off to you to see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Christopher. We do have some questions from our audience, and I'd like to start with this one. This one's a two-part question. Is there a similar FDA food safety plan builder for the Animal Food Preventive Controls Rule or Foreign Supplier Verification Program Rule? And then the other part of that was, is the builder available in any other languages besides English?
So that's a great question. Currently, I'm not aware of it being in any other language. And I do not know if it is in the process of being developed into another language. I can ask around and get back to you on that for sure, but at this point, I'm not aware of any. As far as the Animal Food Rule or the Foreign Supply Rule, currently, the Food Safety Plan Builder has only been developed for the Human Preventive Controls Rule.
Okay. Another question from the audience, is there any additional training that users can get to assist with the electronic version?
As a matter of fact, there is. That's a great question. If you were to Google the Food Safety Plan Builder electronic version, you will see that the FDA website has a link to what they call training videos. And these training videos are designed to be viewed by the viewer, and it gives you a detailed explanation for every single section of the food safety plan. So there'll be a video on allergen preventive controls, there'll be a video on your GMP yes/no questions, there'll be a video on your recall plan, there'll be a video on every single section. And what it actually does is it will show you a screenshot of each screen, and they will give you an example of how to reply and enter information to either the boxes you need to check and or the sections where you have to add narrative explanations. So it's very, very useful. I strongly suggest if somebody is about to use the plan that they go ahead and look at the videos first, and that'll give you a greater grasp of what you're about to enter, and you can always refer to them while you're doing the Food Safety Plan Builder if you're stuck on a particular section. So yes, that training is available, and again, as far as I know, that is also only in English.
Okay. Another question, can the FDA track your copy or use of the Food Safety Plan Builder?
Good question. No, the FDA cannot track your use of the Food Safety Plan Builder. They can determine how many have been downloaded, and that's it. That's all they can do. So, and it's done that way for a reason. The Food Safety Plan is specific for a facility, and it's one way to ensure confidentiality of your food safety plan that's not shared with anybody else. So the answer is no, they cannot track your use of it.
Okay. Here's another question. Where do I put validation records and daily verification records and things like calibration records? Is that something we can enter into this?
That is a great question, too. So although the back of or the end of the electronic version of Food Safety Plan, you can add attachments or you can hyperlinks to some of your files or SOPs, it's really not a place to store your daily records or your validation studies. If your validation study happens to be in electronic form, you can attach it there. If your validation study is a hard copy of something where there's not an electronic version, you can simply reference it on the back of the Food Safety Plan where it's located. Concerning the verification records and calibration records and monitoring records, those are typically kept separately. They're not easy to attach to this electronic version of the Food Safety Plan Builder, and they're really not designed to be. They are typically held in separate files. FSMA allows facilities to either have electronic versions or hard copy paper versions, and it's the flexibility of the facility to decide what version or combination of versions they want to use. But typically, those would be held separately.
Okay. Let's see. I think we have time for one more question. Here's another one from the audience. When the FDA comes to check our compliance with FSMA, can we use the Food Safety Plan Builder as evidence of our policies?
Yes, so that's one thing you can do. The beauty of FSMA is the word flexibility. So you have the flexibility to use this electronic version, say, here's our electronic version. You can actually print out a PDF hard copy of it and present it to the FDA investigator. And that shows that you have done your due diligence. You're honestly trying to comply with FSMA. As with the FSMA rule and from what we've seen in the industry, the FDA currently tries to educate while they regulate. And if they see you've made a good faith effort in completing your food safety plan by using the electronic version, that's completely acceptable.
Great. Let's see. I think we're getting a little close to our 30-minute mark, and if you have any more questions, we'll try to get those answered for you offline and addressed in our LinkedIn group. And with that in mind, I'd like to remind folks that between sessions we do have a FSMA Fridays LinkedIn group where members can continue the conversation about FSMA. If you're not part of our FSMA Fridays LinkedIn group, just go over to LinkedIn and search for FSMA Fridays. You can request membership and we'll get you approved. The group is a really good resource for engagement where sometimes we take session questions offline, and it's also a place where members have discussions about food safety and FSMA amongst themselves. It's another way to foster knowledge sharing around FSMA and food safety. And along the lines of continuing the conversation, Christopher and his team at the Acheson Group are experts on FSMA, and they can be a tremendous help in this area, whether it's around the rules and regulations or actually building out your plans and dealing with compliance issues. You can check them out at achesongroup.com. And I highly recommend that you check out their resources. They have one of the best newsletters out there for the food industry. So add that to your reading list if you haven't already done so. And on the technology side, technology and tools side, with the consultation and implementation that our partners over at TAG do, we're able to complement that on the software side and make the process of compliance a lot more seamless, a lot faster, and more productive for your company. So if you're looking for technology to help complement the work that you're already doing around compliance, whether it's around food safety or quality assurance or even on the supplier compliance side, we've got some great solutions, and you can learn about them over at safetychain.com. And just to wrap up things, I'd like to tell you about a few more resources. Again, we will be sending out a session recording, and we'll get that link and the deck out to everybody by early next week. Safety Chain also hosts an educational webinar series called Beyond Compliance, where we bring on guest presenters to explore various topics of interest to food quality and safety practitioners. There's no cost for these webinars, and they're a really great opportunity to learn from leaders in the industry. We also host monthly demo days. We have one next week on May 30th. We invite you to register for that, and you can find all the details on our website at safetychain.com. We will be attending the Fresh Tech Expo in June in Chicago, Illinois. So if you're at Fresh Tech, please do stop by and say hi to the folks at Safety Chain. And once again, as I mentioned, TAG's newsletter is a must-have. Next month, FSMA Fridays will be on June 29th, so mark that on your calendar, and we'll send out our usual reminders for that. And with that, I want to thank all of you for joining us and continuing to support this series. And Christopher, thank you very much for putting together a terrific presentation today. This was a wonderful session, and hopefully we'll be able to talk you into coming back again very soon.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Great. Thanks, everybody. See you next month, and have a great weekend.